Good morning and happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. We are in Hebrews chapter 11. This is the Hall of Faith, or the Hall of Fame of Faith. We are looking at, there's a list of people, flawed people, broken people, sinful people, just like you and me, whose name ends up in this chapter because of their trust in God. God uses them. And it's a list that should provide some encouragement, although there's great obedience on the part of these people at various times. There's disobedience as well. And part of what we ought to get out of the Bible is this sense that God can and will use these people. He could use me if I was willing to yield my life and be obedient. The book of Acts, as you may know, sort of famously doesn't end. It just stops. So people have made something of this. Acts 29 is an ongoing mission movement because there's a sense that the book of Acts is still being read today, or still being written today, that we're writing the next chapter of Acts. And there's a sense in which, while the canon isn't going to be opened up and Hebrews 11 isn't going to be expanded to include your name, there is a sense in which we are called to exhibit this kind of life and faith. So far I've made points that faith is very important. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. We're saved by grace through faith. And we've looked at Hebrews chapter 11:1 for a definition of faith. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. And I've been trying to define faith by telling you what it's not. So first, it's not believing things that we know are not true. That led to a discussion a little bit about truth and how do we know what's true and the sources of authority, the things that we rely on, this field of epistemology. Talked a little bit about trying to reconcile natural revelation and supernatural revelation. Second thing that I said last Friday, that faith is it's not magic. Faith is not strong because of our ability to change things. There's a lot of trust and sincerity today. If somebody believes something sincerely enough, hard enough, passionately enough, then it needs to be true, or it's true for them. And he said, no, look, when it comes to faith, the question is not how strong our belief is or our will is. It's what are we placing our faith in? A little bit of faith that a strong bridge can hold us, and the bridge will hold us. A lot of faith that a weak bridge will hold us. It means it's probably not likely to hold us. It's the question of what are we placing our faith in? So we place our faith in Christ. Our faith has value and stability, not because of our sincerity, but because of who Jesus is. So today we look at a third thing that faith is not, and that is faith is not a leap in the dark. Faith is not reason, but it's not against reason. God doesn't expect us to believe without evidence. And so we see evidence. We see, for instance, in the Old Testament that when God calls Moses, he reveals himself in the form of a burning bush that gets Moses' attention. And then he performs miracles. There's the parting of the Red Sea. There's water out of a rock. There's manna from heaven. There's a lot of ways in which God is revealing himself and building the trust, rebuilding the trust with his people, the Jews. We see this with the life of Jesus. So Jesus gains big crowds as he begins his teaching as a rabbi. And he gains them in part because he speaks with an authority nobody else has. And he gains them because he goes to the fringes. He goes to the broken people who are open to his message. And he's got a power that no one else has. But he gains a lot of his following because of the miracles that he does. Most significantly, he heals people. And that gets their attention. And so he does all these signs. And that confirms the claims that he's making. So we could step back and look at this idea of the whole field of apologetics, the evidence for the faith. There's evidence, there's arguments, philosophical treatises on the existence of God. We can look at the cosmological argument, for instance. So we have reason to believe that God exists because when we look around, we know that things either that exist either have always existed or they came into being. And if they came into being, then they either were brought into being by something else. There's no such thing as infinite regression. Or they created themselves, spontaneous generation. Well, we don't believe in spontaneous generation. Nothing can create something. And so we say things are either eternal or they were created by something that was eternal. And so that is, the universe is clearly not eternal. If it was, we would be in heat death by now. So it had a beginning, the Big Bang, but what came before that? We could look at the teleological argument. There's the ontological. There's arguments for the existence of God. There are reasons to believe. Faith is not believing things that you know are not true. Faith is not magic. Faith is also not a leap in the dark. Not against reason. It's not reason, but it's not against reason. So there are two more things that faith is not. We'll cover those the rest of this week. And meanwhile, as you're thinking about faith, think more about Jesus, because he is the object of faith, and that's where our focus should be. We'll pick this up tomorrow.